Greetings, chess friends. Welcome to Chess Exercise 101. Well, in this video, I'm just going to be covering the game between Magnus Carlsen and Nepomniachtchi. This is game 8 of the World Chess Championship, and it's a win for Magnus. Another win. Feels like the screws are loose now in Nepos camp. He started very well, 5 straight draws, and game 6 was decisive, the longest game that they've played. And kid you not, Nepo is not a walkover. He's not a part at all. He's the only player with a positive score against the world champion. But here he's been, I think his openings have been questioned because again, with Magnus Carlsen, you never know what you get, and that's why he's the toughest in the business. Where he can play one e4, one d4, one c4, can play knight f3, whatever he wants to play. So here Nepo again fights for the center. He's keen to show his Petrov line. And then Magnus Carlsen says like, okay, there's something that I've seen in your armor. There's a chink in your armor. And here Nepomniachtchi, instead of usually like they play like knight to f6, knight c6, where you can protect your pawn. But here now he just wants to thingy. Magnus Carlsen doesn't do anything to protect his pawn. He just straight wants to clarify the center. Nepo takes. Magnus Carlsen puts the question to the knight, where are you gonna go? You have to eventually land somewhere. And then it's like, okay, I'm gonna protect it by pushing my d pawn to d5. Magnus Carlsen takes. In this position, now it's really like sharp because you never know what your opponent is going to play. There's so many moves that can be played. You can play here, try to go for the direct attack. Scholars mate as we would, but they're not going to do that. They're professionals. They've seen this way too many times. No one is going to be caught off guard by this. So now Nepo develops his knight because you want your pieces like developed. You don't want your pieces on the back rank, So Magnus takes, Nepo takes the bishop, very sensible move. Here, Magnus Carlsen realizes that look at this knight, it's controlling the square, it's controlling the square, it's controlling the square, it's controlling the square, this square. In the business, we call this knight the octo knight. It's also controlling that square. So it's so powerful. Magnus has to contest against it. You don't want your opponent to have the knight like in the center where it's contesting everything. So now Magnus takes. So here now, this is still relative theory, nothing new, nothing alarming. So Magnus Carlsen, when he was asked in the interview, this move by Nepo, he's slightly surprised that he allowed the play like this because not only, so look at this is like a sort of a mirror. He's just mirroring what White is doing here, but it's not the most accurate move in the position. So Magnus here castles because before you go into for an attack, you really want your king protected, and that's the best way to do it. Nepo here plays h5. In the business, this is called Harry the H pawn. So Harry is pushed up the board. So usually this signals that your opponent wants to fight because in the future he will give away that pawn. And look at where this rook is eyeing. He's eyeing this square. This bishop is eyeing this square. The king, the queen can jump in. Look at the bishop. Look at everything here. So Magnus stopped to think for 40 minutes in this position. Everyone was like, what is he thinking about? What's happening? Is he surprised? And I think afterwards in the interview, he did indicate that he was not prepared for this move. Whether Nepo prepared it beforehand or just initially played it into, that word. But anyways, so now Magnus is thinking of the ideas that Black has because Black here is playing dynamically, and this can very much lead to into a place where your opponent takes a fight to you, and you are swept off the board because you're not ready for it. So Magnus plays practically here. He's like, check, asking Nepo, what do you want to do? You can either block by this bishop, but that's somewhat passive. You can either play block by this bishop, but if you block by the bishop, Magnus can play something like this, and then, you know, in the end, he wants to trade off everything because he doesn't want any surprises. If someone plays such a move on a world championship match, you just pause, because that's more like blitz type of move. But Magnus is also world number one in blitz, so yeah. And then here Nepo side steps because he wants to fight, but again, this decision for him is criticized. He's already lost game 6, and now his king can no longer castle. So everything here just seems somewhat ambiguous. And then now this allows Magnus to like, okay, I'm gonna contest. I want to exchange bishops, because this bishop here, if he takes, Magnus takes, and then takes his pawn. So here now, Nepo's like, okay, I have to put my queen into the mix. But Magnus like, okay, let me take the bishop. Whatever you decide to do, I don't think you're gonna want to double your pawns here. Not even. So he takes with the queen. And here now Magnus is like, okay, let's see. Let me improve my position. What else can I do? And then now he wants to put his rook on e1, contest for the open file. Rooks belong on an open file where they're cutting through the board and putting pressure. So here now, okay, there we go. Nepo's like, I'm going to contest, but he's like, for him, it's difficult because the other defender of this, it's the king. The king and the queen, they're not the best defenders. The queen is very sharp attacking, but defending is the worst piece that you want to defend with, because your opponent can contest and it's not easy for you to exchange your queen. Here, Magnus, like, okay, I'm contesting this immediately. Napo plays another inaccurate move. Well, the Indians don't prefer this. Well, yeah, already his position is somewhat not in a good standing. So here, this is very bad. So Magnus jumps immediately with his queen, threatening, like after exchanging this, threatening to go into the position. The king is poorly placed. So now this is somewhat very bad. Okay, Nepo defends, tries to solidify his pawns, but look at this bishop, how horrible it is. So you want your bishop, if you have a white light squared bishop, you want your pawns on the dark squares, because then it can cut through and move. It's not unlike the queen, which can move in any direction. So I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking to myself that, wow, here Nepo, he wanted to go for something. Maybe he's tired still after the longest game in the chess championship, where it lasted 136 moves. Because his moves here, they're not accurate, and he's not, he's not even spending time over the board. And Magnus take, and then look at this. The rook is perfectly placed. This bishop, it's behind its pawns. The only square it can go to, it's the decent square. Nothing much is happening here now. So now Nepo is already playing for a draw, but Magnus can squeeze for a win here if he plays accurately. So now Nepo's like, okay, let's exchange queens, because I realize my position is bad. If we exchange queens, there are there's like less problems to face. All right. So he tries to improve his bishop. And then here, sort of like what to do, because Magnus has an advantage as an open file, but there isn't much that he's doing. Then he decides to play h3. This move is criticized because this bishop is targeting this pawn. Let's ignore this bishop here. The queen sometimes lands to the g file, anywhere in the g file. Can easily take, can leads to, those type of mates. But in this position, that plane is too slow for Nepo. Here, and also look at this move. This is a very good move from Nepo, because his bishop here, it's blocked in, as you can see. But this one, meaning white's bishop, should they exchange all the pieces? White's bishop can never attack this pawn. And here now comes Magnus saying like, okay, I want to clarify things in the center because already in this position, like I have the open file, but your pawns are very coordinated. So another thing you want to do when you're attacking your opponent, you want to attack the head of the pawn chain. This is the head of the pawn chain. So these pawns connected, they're on a chain. So you want to attack the head of the pawn chain because if he takes, then this takes, now it becomes loose. White already has a weak pawn here, but he doesn't care about that because he has initiative. Nepo takes because he doesn't want to dislodge his chain. Magnus takes with the bishop. Now look at the scope of this bishop, eyeing the f7 pawn. This is looking scary already for Nepo. And then, yeah, oh, what a blunder. So it seems natural to play this move because your pawn is protected by the bishop here, and you want to attack the bishop. But then he missed that Magnus has a3 check. And this is the beginning of the end for Nepo. A3 check was played. Obviously, Magnus is not going to miss that. The king sidesteps, and then Magnus wins a pawn. In top level games, a pawn is the game. A pawn can decide the game. They play for squares. Like sometimes they fight for squares, a specific square, and if they get hold of the square, they win. So that's why it's instructive for us mere people to learn from Grandmaster games. If you want to improve your chess, look at what they do, their thought processes, and go through the game. So here now, Nepo can never take here. If he takes, this bishop is also falling, this pawn is protected, so Magnus, and also now you have doubled pawns on this file. Okay, so so Nepo decides to defend in this fashion. Magnus retreats with the bishop. Obviously now you want to retreat. So now comes planning. What do you do next? What needs to happen? Nepo's like, okay, this is another blunder by him. He didn't really feel sharp today. He's one of the sharpest players. He plays fast, and sometimes it works for him playing fast. But here, he's playing fast, but yet again making crucial mistakes that, yeah, you can't make it a world championship level. So Magnus, he is like, okay, I'm gonna develop my rook, get it in the game. Here Nepo wants to trade, then Magnus calculates, it's like, okay, it's good for me to trade. So you always want to trade pieces when it's advantageous for you. You don't just want to trade pieces because someone's asking you to trade, but like if it's gonna benefit you, then by all means trade. Yeah, Nepo takes, take. So now Nepo also has an isolated pawn. Magnus like, okay, I'm gonna like solidify my position. I'm the one playing for the win here. You have to defend this. My king is protected. Your king is loose. Look at this move now. It looks horrible because there isn't enough protection for Nepo's king. And Magnus, yeah, says like, okay, I'm gonna play on that. I'm gonna take, and also I think Patas would have played this move before now Nepo moved his queen, but you have to sometimes give material in order to make progress. So here he allows Nepo to come into the frame and win a pawn. But then Magnus is like, okay, I'm going to take the pawn with a check. And here now the crucial thing for Magnus is that he doesn't want to allow Nepo to enter into this square, because if he enters into this square, there can be a perpetual check. So far it's only one macho check. I can check here, then go here. Cannot really have another check because he's controlling. Well, if he's here, he can have another check, and then it's a repetition and all of that. So here he checks first, right? Because he wants to control this crucial square. He doesn't want to give chances to Nepo. He moves his pawn. Nepo takes. Like, okay, check. I want to take the other pawn. He comes back, and then he has to play e5 here. E5 is the move. This is hold. It holds the position. There's not much chances for Nepo if this is here. And then now, okay, check. So now it's just a matter of like finding a perfect way to advance your pawns. And here's like, okay, I want to try and protect my pawns. Nepo's gonna try again. It's like, okay, you left that square, I'm coming in. Then Magnus decides, right? Okay, I'm gonna allow you some checks. So yeah, he's actually quite smart about this. He's defending this square. He's like, okay, I'm allowing you some checks, but I will just move my king here, and that's it. There won't be more checks to do. So now moves, and then like, okay, check. I wanna try to move everything. Now it's like, okay, I'm gonna protect this pawn. I'm protecting this pawn. There isn't really much that you can do. You have one lousy check, but it's not gonna do anything. He moves out of the way, and then now Magnus pushes his pawn. Okay, so it's like, all right, I'm gonna take here. You're gonna move, it's fine. I'm gonna just come here. You can check me, but this I can easily protect my king by moving around and stuff like that. So here Nepo loses game 8. So now he's 2 games down. And against the world champion, that's a difficult task. That's a daunting task. Hopefully he bounces back because we are keen for some fighting chess. He's a very sharp player. This makes it easy for us to like to see different styles in chess. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share with other people. I'll catch you on the next video.